Welcome to Strip Cover Lit. I am Adrian Fort, and we are here for the 5th in a 29-part series as we journey through Kerri Majors. This is not a writing manual. This chapter is on revision, and it covers pages 26 through 31. Revision is a tricky subject. Is it possible to publish without revising a work? Sure. I've got one or two pieces out there that are first drafts, and I'm not proud of it. Every time that I write a submission letter, it pains me because I know that the piece that I put out there is not all that it could have been, is not the best that it could have been. And the only one who really pays for that is you as the writer, because you put a piece out there that you were better than. And it's one of those things where you kind of break out in a cold sweat every time you have to list it. Still, someone wanted it, and it just speaks poorly of you on a I'm really not sure it makes you feel lesser as an artist, not as a writer, if that makes any sense. And it's something that is regretful. But I am not the only person out there who has a first draft in print. In fact, quite possibly one of the most infamous first drafts in the history of literature is right here, As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner, which he claims not only is it a first draft, but it was written in 6 weeks, as he wrote between midnight and 4 a.m. over that month and a half, which, being as this is an incredible feat of literature, it is hard for me to believe, especially considering the fact that Faulkner is notoriously full of his own stench. But if so, man, kudos. But this, if you want anyone to love your work, you have to love revision. That part is not tricky. The tricky part is how you do it. How do you revise? How does a writer change what he or she has already written? The reason it's tricky is it is almost, there's no checklist, right? When you think of revision, you remember those rubrics that you used to get in school where it's a checklist. But there is no checklist, and in fact, revision is a point of superstition among many writers. Hey, if it works, it's like magic, right? So often we get stuck in little circles of how-to, which end up becoming something like a checklist. Majors opens her section citing that the revision process, her revision process, starts by opening a brand new document, and she will cut and paste good stuff that she doesn't think fits the story into an entirely separate document, which she will then scavenge through later. But if all stories are not equal or similar, why might their revisions be so? Here's how Majors describes revision. I almost said religion. On page 27, revision is much messier because it requires you to really listen to all that feedback from friends, pros, and the little writer's voice in your own head telling you that the draft isn't working, and figure out how to apply it in your draft. And that doesn't sound like a checklist at all, does it? Especially using that word messy. Still, I think you can really use something close to or approaching a checklist on the craft level. For me, the process is fairly similar with short stories and poetry, and it's a fairly consistent process. I write the first draft by hand. I write in composition notebooks. I give the story once over, once it's finished, where I read things and I notice where chunks need to be added or taken out. Chunks that need to be added, I will append with an asterisk on a separate page. Usually this is while I'm trying to figure out what the piece is saying to me, what the piece is about, if there is some central core metaphor, if there is some change which needs to be happening in the character, and I can find little bits and pieces where that change can be taking place. I'll sort of finagle things in there. The third part is I will proofread it, which Majors describes as such. Once again on page 27, a little earlier in the paragraph that we just read. Proofreading, which consists of checking your prose for spelling and grammar errors and stylistic consistency, is an extremely important final step before you hand in that story or send out that novel to agents. And that's what I will do while looking at the mechanics and the things like that while I keyboard the piece. Once I've got the piece typed up, I'll make a round through looking for strong images. Images that are central to the story that I can really spruce up and make a little more real, make a little more tangible for the reader. After that, I'll make a round looking at the characters. Are they different enough? Do they have their own voice? Do they have their own appearance? Appearance for me as a writer isn't as big a deal as voice, because if I can give you the voice of a character, you end up implanting your own image onto the piece. I noticed this early on when I was reading Michael Crichton. I read a lot of Michael Crichton in middle school, and it bothered me that I didn't care how he described the characters. I was going to envision them my way through the entire piece. So for me, the appearance of characters is something that is almost, I don't want to say not important, but it's only important, if that makes sense. After that, I'll make a round looking for language. The voice of the writer. Is it out of the way? If it's in the way, should it be? Is the writer also the narrator, also the speaker? What is the relationship between those three components? I'll make a round through looking for sounds. How can I make things sound to the reader? Are there any smells in the piece that could really engage the reader? Are there any tactile senses that you can run through? For example, like the thing that gets me, that I think of for this, is remember in Inception, when it is the dream within a dream where Leonardo DiCaprio has to be kicked backwards into the bathtub to wake up from. The bad guy character realizes that he is in a dream because the floor doesn't feel right. These are things that can completely envelop us into a story, into a place, into a time, which all of these things, sounds, smells, tactile senses, are things which can add another level, because as I've said many times on the channel, vivid and continuous dream. John Gardner in The Art of Fiction refers to fiction as a vivid and continuous dream. Anytime that dream is broken, we are taking a little bit out of the fiction. We are taking a little bit out of what could be a reality. And this is a fairly useful tactic for me with poetry as well. The second time I go through a poem, on that first redraft, I'm thinking of the central metaphor and or conceit. The third time I'm looking for images. After that, I'm playing with the language involved. After that, I'll look at line breaks. And I think that it's important to put line breaks off, because you won't be able to find the flow of that poem until everything else is set. But that's me. What is your revision process like? I'd be interested to hear from you in the comments below, just to see if there's anything I can steal from you and incorporate in mine, as I think that revision is one of the steps to your writing that is important to keep evolving, because it is revision which will allow the rest of your writing process to evolve as well. If you like this, I would appreciate it if you hit the like button. If you have not already subscribed, go ahead and hit subscribe, and I am looking forward to seeing you for the next chapter, which is Watch Your Soap Operas, which is pages 32 through 36, and this is not a writing manual by Kerri Majors.